Hello and welcome into another episode of the Bulls Roundtable Podcast. I am your host, Gavin Dorsey, joined by fellow Bulls Roundtable writer, Michael Walton II. Michael, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Feeling pretty good after a pretty improbable Bulls win. Right when it looks like things are going to go terrible for them, they always find a way to pull us back in.
Certainly. I believe the last time we hosted one of these episodes, I want to say the Bulls were either 5-1 or 6-1. So we did a whole thing called Real or Not Real. You know, is this team a top 4 team in the West? You said yes. I said no. You also made fun of me for calling you out on the Bucks take, and now the Bucks have gone from number 2 to number 9 or whatever they are in the Eastern Conference. So it's been a minute, certainly a lot to catch up on, but obviously when talking about the Bulls, very up and down so far. Those massive highs with the 5 straight wins, almost 2 straight losses, and then a comeback win with the late Vooch shot against the 76ers, gets them to 6-1, then just an absolutely brutal stretch of games against really high quality opponents, against the Bucks, against the Cavs in a game that they probably should have won, against the Spurs in a game that they probably should have won, then against the Pistons in a game that Detroit was missing literally everybody.
Yeah.
Then against the Jazz in a double overtime game that they probably should have won. Are you noticing a theme here? Are you noticing a theme with this Bulls losing streak? But finally, from the clutches of defeat, the Bulls have a big win or a big lead last night, end up blowing it in the fourth quarter to Portland, and Vucci Main, Nikola Vucevic, comes up clutch with a buzzer-beating 3. Michael, what were your reactions to that game? What was going through your head?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. I think the first thing, just surface level, when the Bulls pulled out the win, the first thing is something I've said this a little earlier. I think I said it maybe after the Bulls lost to the Knicks in that the NBA Cup game. But regardless of how this season finishes, whether the Bulls are a playoff team or a play-in team, or if things go the opposite direction and they're a true lottery team, unlike usual, regardless of what happens, I think it's fair to say this Bulls team is different. And that win against Portland was a big, piece of evidence towards that fact. And we've known Billy Donovan as a solid coach, or at least most people have given him credit for working with what he has roster-wise and still finding a way to put together a competent defense or win games. But I think that win against Portland showed a different level of fight that we've seen from this Bulls team in recent years. A lot of times after you see Portland fight back from down 21 points to take a late lead on the road in a game that starts late West Coast time, I don't think it's unreasonable for the Bulls to, kind of run out of gas and, just let Portland take over. But they fought back. Vucevic, I don't know I think this is his second game-winning shot this year. As you mentioned,
it could honestly be the third I totally forgot about the Nuggets game when I was doing my spiel, by the way, too. But he did have the game-winning shot in the Nuggets game. It wasn't
like a late go-ahead
come
shot.
From behind shot, but effectively, I believe it was Casey Johnson asked him on the broadcast, after the Sixers game, when was the last time you had a game winner? He's now effectively had 3 game winners in the last, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Yeah. So a big part of it goes to Vucevic, but this team as a whole has shown, people will say they made mistakes where they shouldn't have been in this situation, but it still shows a remarkable amount of composure to be able to rally together on the road, especially, and get that type of win in a tough environment. So you have to give credit to a very young Bulls team for finding a way to pull out these wins, very similar to the Chicago Bears, where a win is a win. You don't need to apologize with how you get it. As long as you pull it out, still counts in the record, just the same. So a lot of credit to the Bulls, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think we're entering a point where Nikola Vucevic is a pretty strong early candidate for clutch player of the year, just because if the Bulls, we have a long way to go, but if they're going to finish the season as a team that's near 500 or even just slightly above or slightly below, if we get to a point where majority of the Bulls wins are close games where Vucevic hits a game-winning shot, it's going to be hard to not have him at least in the conversation. Especially this being a contract year, an older player who a lot of people were expecting to have a down year is kind of doing the exact opposite, defying expectations, for a Bulls team that's defying expectations. So a lot of credit to Vucevic and a lot of credit to a young Bulls team for sticking together.
Yeah, credit to him on those game winners. I do think the thing with the award is that it's probably going to end up going to a guard. I mean, you just look at so the last two winners, right? I believe it's been in effect for 2 years, were De'Aaron Fox and Steph Curry. And I think the formula that the voters are kind of looking for is, a microwave, someone that just like gets hot and they score a bunch of points in a row. And Vooch isn't going to do that. He's been incredible with making those shots in the last second, last moment. We'll see. We'll see. I think it's definitely very encouraging. And as great as this I don't want to say renaissance because he's still been playing great and he hasn't really, dropped off as much as great as that has been from him. I think the main storyline from, now the last two games for the Bulls where they've really found success against two playoff play-in caliber teams has been the Bulls bench. Outscored the Nuggets 66-7 in that game on Monday, and then outscored the Trailblazers 60-20 in the game last night. We're recording this on Thursday, the game being Wednesday night. They've talked this entire season about how the Bulls' depth is their strength. And granted, a lot of that scoring is with Kobe White coming back into the fold and him being on the bench to start instead of as a starter as they're easing him back in. But, for me, I think that's kind of like the biggest takeaway from the last couple games, at least, is just how strong this Bulls bench unit is and how their depth can carry them to wins this year.
Yeah, I mean, I feel weird repeatedly talking about award possibilities with the Chicago Bulls. But again, even with that 5-game losing streak mixed in there, I think it's been a team that still has been a little bit above expectations from, again, what people thought was going to happen with a young group without Zach LaVine for a full season after not buying last year's sort of second half hot streak. But Ayo Dosunmu, you mentioned the bench. I think it kind of starts with him. He's a player who I think is going to be a serious candidate for Sixth Man of the Year. Again, as you mentioned with Clutch Player of the Year, you talked about guards there, but I should say rather something you didn't mention is these awards usually go to players who are on winning teams. So obviously if the Bulls can't stay above 500, if they end the year as a 9 seed or a 10 seed, even if they look better than last year, I don't think a play-in team is going to see any major award go to any of their players, unless you're talking about Rookie of the Year, because obviously the expectations are a little different there. But nonetheless, it all goes to say, I think Ayo is going to be in serious contention for that award. We'll see if he cools off. But he's quickly getting into the territory where we're almost, 20-something games into the season, and you are who you are at some point. Ayo was shooting 50, 40, 90 while averaging over 15 points a game, which put him in some pretty historic sort of, company there. He's cooled off now. I believe he's shooting just over 88% from the free throw line. But again,
yeah, he was 2 for 4, 2 of 4 from the line on against the Blazers. So just missed those 2 free throws. Otherwise, he'd be like 55, 43, 90, I think.
Yeah, just below that. And so you're talking about a guy who's still shooting lights out from the 3-point line. He's really the engine to your bench unit. He's a Swiss Army knife because, again, something everyone loves about Ayo. He can play pretty much any position out there, but really we're talking about pretty much 1 through 3. You can slide him in anywhere there. He can handle the ball, play some point. He can play off ball, guard bigger guys. And something I wanted to shout out, I'm glad you started with the bench unit there. The Bulls have been really good this year at driving, just in general, to create shots for themselves and others. Last year, the focus was getting up a lot of 3-point attempts, just shooting them a lot. This year, they're really focusing on getting to the free throw line and shooting inside more to create better looks from the 3-point line. So I think as of the time we're recording this, the Bulls are 3rd in the league in 3-point percentage. They're shooting, I think, just above 39% from 3. But a big part of that is Kobe, Giddey, and Trey are all driving a lot. I think they're all basically over 14, 15 drives per game. Giddey's leading the way with just under 17 drives per game. But what's interesting, Ayo, coming off the bench, he's just under 8 drives a game, but he's leading the Bulls, shooting 52% on his drives to the rim. So you got a guy who every time he's driving to the rim, 52%, he's getting you a great shot. And if he's putting it up, he's finishing it. We all know Ayo can pass and also create. So when he's driving to the rim, he's making something good happen essentially every time. And it's why Billy Donovan's so comfortable going to him. And when you look at the bench unit, myself included, a lot of people were upset with Billy not playing the big guys a little bit more. Jalen Smith was dealing with some stuff, so it could have been injury related, but I believe you had Jalen Smith getting less than 15 minutes in a game where the Bulls were really beat up on the offensive boards. I believe Portland had 26 offensive rebounds to the Bulls having 7. And the Bulls shot lights out from the field. That's been their thing, being efficient this year. But getting beat up so bad on the glass is what helped Portland stay in that game and eventually take a lead with Klingon, giving them a lot of problems down low. But credit to Ayo Dosunmu and the Bulls bench, because they haven't just been really pesky. They've been incredibly efficient, to the point where now we're almost anticipating the Bulls bench coming in to sort of make the game get comfortable. Even though Kobe joining that starting unit, I think will change those feelings a lot.
Yeah, that's what happened in the Nuggets game. I mean, it was the second night of a back-to-back right after losing in double
Yeah.
overtime against Utah, and you could tell they just looked sluggish. They looked absolutely gassed. I want to say Denver started out like 10-3, ended up, the Bulls ended up making it close, but Billy Donovan very quickly went through 11 guys through his rotation.
Yeah.
Just, okay, get some other guys in here, get some energy, and the energy that they're able to to bring off the bench, even if they don't have any incredible scores aside from, Kobe White, who didn't play that game against the Nuggets, took it off second night of a back-to-back, especially coming back from the injury. Even if they don't have a ton of incredible scores off the bench, the sole fact that they have just come into the game with energy every single time and speed and, Ayo Dosunmu, even if Jalen Smith's not like the fastest guy, I mean, he's a 5, so he's outpacing a lot of other team centers. And, he played a great game before Jokic, whether it was dislocated his shoulder or, I guess they've officially ruled it like a pec strain or something, but he was playing lights out before that. And I think that's kind of the main reason that we didn't see him with more action against the Blazers. Overall, and, I know you have not been shy to shout out Patrick Williams as well. He's been playing, he's been playing pretty well. Only shot 2 of 7 last game, but overall, he looks like he's had some new life breathed into him this season. Overall, I think it's incredibly encouraging because the defense or the bench is breathing new life into the offense, and then Kobe White is kind of serving as like a bridge between that, where previously it seemed like a lot of the scoring weight fell on Josh Giddey, especially as Matas had, a couple good games, a couple bad games. He's gotten in foul trouble a couple times. So it's going to be interesting moving forward, because I want to say this was the hardest strength of schedule in the NBA so far, is what the Bulls have gone through. They're 8-6 afterward. And now I want to say they have the 30th ranked strength of schedule, the easiest moving forward. So definitely going to be something to study, going to be something to look at.
Yeah, I believe that's true, because I've definitely heard sort of the same sort of side of that the Bulls have like the easiest strength of schedule moving forward. So they should be able to stack wins from here on out now that they've sort of started hot. But yeah, on that note, Jalen Smith dealing with the injury probably had something to do with him maybe playing a limited amount of minutes. And I want to give Billy Donovan credit, because I do feel like Patrick Williams should have played a little bit more in that Portland game. I believe he had 5 rebounds in his limited time out there. Again, on a night the Bulls were really struggling. I believe they got out-rebounded 64-38 total. Somebody would have to fact check me on that, but they just got dominated on the glass. And it was one of those nights where it really felt like anyone who was giving you some effort on the glass really should have played more. But playing devil's advocate against myself, Billy does prefer, when he's not working with his full deck, to sort of shuffle things up. Zach Collins, I think when he's back, Billy will do a little bit more of a platoon system where you see Smith and Collins both not play a lot, but get a little bit of stretches in the game to keep Vooch fresh. But I think now that he doesn't have Collins, we see him going to Julian Phillips and Terry to stay small, but still gives him some versatility when defending wings and forwards. And I have to give Billy credit, because it's not something I necessarily would have agreed with myself. But I believe in his limited time out there, Dalen Terry had like 3 steals, 2 blocks. He was really active. He always provides a lot of energy. And again, it's not something I would have thought to do, but Dalen Terry's brief stretch out there definitely could have had something to do with the Bulls ultimately being able to seal that win. So that big rotation where Billy lets everybody get a little bit of playing time, I think it's going to, again, in the end, benefit them, because they play such a high-paced style. We'll see if Noah Singh can sort of work his way into there at some point. But for now, I just have faith in how Billy's handling things because, again, you got a young group, a lot of guys improve the situations, and he's finding ways to work almost a new player into the rotation, it seems like, every night.
Right. That is the downside of having, a really thin rotation. You have a bunch of really strong starters at the top, is if one or two of them has like a bad night, everything kind of falls apart. But it seems like with this team, there's just such a desire to get everybody some playing time and figure out who's got it going. And, you shouted out Dalen Terry. I totally meant to and forgot. He played 17 minutes. He
Yeah.
played 17 minutes last night. Had 6 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds, 3 steals, and a block.
Yeah.
All over the place, right? And this is someone who, has been in and out of the lineup. Some games he's had larger, some games he hasn't even played at all. Really trying to see what they have with him and Julian Phillips. And I mean, he's still a young guy, right? This is, I mean, it just the way that anybody off this team is able to make an impact on any given night, I think is remarkable for the Bulls. And I think honestly, moving forward, that's probably one of the the biggest strengths for this team, I would say. One thing I did want to ask you before we kind of move into projections next week, over the next week, things like that. I wanted to ask you about Modest a little bit because he's
Yes.
cooled
Yeah.
off a little bit since starting. You know, had those 4 fouls last night, 3 in the first half. What are you seeing from him? Why has he been struggling of late?
Well, a lot of it admittedly is his playing time, which is something, obviously he can control in the sense that what he does. But when I say he can't control, I mean in the literal sense that obviously he can't literally control how much Billy Donovan has him out there. He can just do the right things and hope that it works out. So a lot of times he's just been not playing a lot. That doesn't happen frequently unless he's in foul trouble. Last night, I believe he got under 20 minutes. He wasn't out there a lot, but he was pretty efficient in the time that he was on the floor. With Matas, I'm not seeing a lot offensively to worry me. There are the occasional times that he tries to do a little bit too much. I think when you get to a point where Matas is taking 5+ dribbles, you really see him getting into trouble. That's when he's around the free throw line extended and he's trying to work his way into a spin move to get up a tough floater or a tough layup. I think Matas is still in the point of his career where he's forcing a lot of tough shots when he gets a mismatch with a smaller defender because he's so eager to take advantage of that mismatch and get a good look. But the problem is he's not recognizing that sometimes when you have that mismatch, you can drive and then get help defense to commit to open up better looks for your teammates. Obviously, it's something that Matas sees, but it's not something he's executing enough. And that's just something that comes with, I think, experience and playing time in the NBA. When I was looking at the drive statistics on NBA.com to sort of see what was going on with who was driving the Bulls offense, and obviously it was mostly the guards and Kobe White, Giddey, and Trey Jones. Matas was sort of mixed in there with Io in terms of the bench guys, in terms of frequency of drives. But something that was interesting is all of them were around 40 to 60% in terms of the percentage of times they passed the ball. I believe Matas was one of the few guys under 20%. Matas was at 17%. And that's 17% of the times Matas Buzel's drives to the rim, he's passing the ball. So that's way too low of a figure, especially if you're someone who's eventually going to be a star-type player or a driver of offense in the league, because defenses are loading up on Matas because they know he's not kicking out enough when he's driving to the rim. It makes it a little bit easier to stop him. He's a little bit more predictable when he's on the scouting report. So basically, Matas needs to do like the rest of the Bulls, trust your teammates a little bit more, sometimes make the easy pass on a drive, even if you're getting a hockey assist and you're not creating something right away, just because with the way the Bulls play a high pace, the ball will make its way back to you. So he just needs to learn that sometimes making the simple play is easier than forcing a shot, even if you have the mismatch. And I think those little things are the things that drives a head coach crazy, especially one like Billy Donovan, who deals well with young players. And so something I think we're seeing is also a lot of tough love. I think Billy is coaching Matas harder than he honestly is the rest of the team, but that shows you it's because he has likely high expectations for him as a player.
Yeah, definitely. I think there. I mean, the flashes are so good. I will say
Very.
that. And the lack of passing out on the drives is an issue when you have an offense that is almost entirely predicated on driving, getting the defense to collapse, and then passing out to an open 3-point shooter. I mean, we literally saw it on the game-winning play where Kobe uses his downhill ability, catches the defense off guard, and then in the air fires it back out to Vooch. So definitely an issue for him. But at the same time, you can see these flashes where they're so good. He has one in either the first or second quarter in the game against the Blazers where he's taken it up the court a little bit in transition. I can't remember if it was on Kamara or Murray, and the ball's in his right hand. He's on the left. He like presses it down hard, does like a quick scoop almost like over to the outside so fast that the defender doesn't even see it. And just based on using his length, he's able to get to the rim so fast. And I wish there was a little bit more of that. It seems like there's a lot of stand in the corner and then cut. And it seems like there's a lot more that he can do. But yeah, overall, you're saying not something to be worried about. I think a lot of Bulls fans probably, sounding the alarm a little bit too early. It's still early in the season. Moving forward, we got about a week and a half left in the November slate. Bulls play the Heat in another NBA Cup game. I want to say the Heat are 2-0 in NBA Cup games. They might be 1-0. But that would be huge in terms of the Bulls getting to Vegas. Then they host the Wizards, play Pelicans, Hornets, and Pacers on the road to close out the month. What are you feeling? I mean, the Heat is a tough matchup for sure. They've had an up and down season so far, especially with that kind of offense that they're running. But overall, a pretty favorable schedule over the back half of the month. If you had to give a prediction, what are you kind of looking out for over the next 5 games for the Bulls?
Yeah, so just to make sure those 5 games, we got the Heat. Was that Hornets?
Yeah,
Pelicans?
Heat, Wizards, Pelicans, Hornets, and Pacers.
Wow.
So the back, yeah,
Wow.
it's definitely a winnable slate for Chicago.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so I hate to put the Bulls on the spot like this, but I honestly think it's a stretch where they could go 4-1. And I honestly think the one wouldn't come where people would expect it to. I think based off of recent history, they would beat Miami just because we've seen them handle Miami a lot in the regular season. It's always the play-in where we see the Chicago Bulls run into some trouble with Miami Heat, and it's also Tyler Hero where they run into trouble with the Heat, who I don't believe would be back for that game. So I think the Bulls would actually maybe drop the game to the Pelicans. I have no honest reason for them dropping the game to the Pelicans besides Derek Queen looking like the real deal and being a nuisance inside. And then it maybe being a game where Zion Williamson plays. You really never know on any given night, whether he's going to suit up. But if he plays, it's a game where maybe the Bulls take them a little lighter than they should because of the record and they catch them off guard. It's also a team where if you're playing a high-paced style against the Pelicans, it could come back to bite you because, again, you're dealing with Trey Murphy, Zion Williamson, a lot of young athletic guys who can score themselves. So I think the Bulls would go 4-1, but I think they would have an honest chance at sweeping that trip and going 5-0 just because Miami's clearly on paper the toughest game. And with the way the Bulls have been playing recently, I think they play enough in terms of sharing the ball where on any given night, you can't really key in on anyone on Chicago to sort of slow the offense down, even more so with Kobe White looking like he hasn't missed a step since he's been back in the rotation. So I think you're looking at a serious 5-0. And I think the biggest thing I would be watching for in terms of overall things to watch for is I would be curious if Kobe White re-enters the starting lineup at some point. You would expect that, but he's been very effective off the bench. So we don't expect Kobe White to be a 6-man, but it's the type of thing where if Billy Donovan really likes the way the rotation looks, Kobe White returning from injury gives him a little bit of leeway to continue to say that's the reason he's doing it and continue to get a look at it. So I'm mostly watching to see if that starting lineup re-enters Kobe White at some point or if we keep seeing him as a member of the very effective bench unit.
Yeah, we'll see. I do think he's projected only to play one of the back-to-backs this weekend. I would assume next weekend he probably could be good to play both, but at least definitely going to get one. I'm similarly going to go 4-1. I am going to say that they lose to the Heat. However, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to say Maybe it's the grew up a Wizards fan in me, but you never know. You never know what can happen with the Wizards. They always seem to pull off some kind of game that like nobody thinks that they would win. I'm assuming that they're going to play Kobe White tomorrow in the NBA Cup game against the Heat.
Yeah, against
I
Miami.
think
Yep.
any kind of little milestone thing, as much as fans poo-poo the NBA Cup and whatnot, I think that for a team that hasn't made the playoffs in a couple of years, sure, why not? Let's buy into this in-season tournament and see if we can, get a couple extra, $1,000, go to Vegas or something, get an extra trophy. And the second half of that back-to-back, Alex Sarr could be a pretty tough matchup for Vucevic. He has I saw this chart. I can't remember the x-axis and y-axis. This is a terrible graph crime. But Alex Sarr has defended a ridiculous amount of shots in the paint compared to anybody else in the NBA. Just because their defense just has him sitting down there. He's not roaming the perimeter at all. And so regardless of whatever his block rate is, he's getting enough looks. People are driving enough on him that he has been incredibly effective as a defender in the paint. I think it could cause some trouble. I think if the Bulls are able to hit from three, it should be fine. The Wizards don't have a ton of great guard defenders. They have some good perimeter defenders, but I don't know. You can watch out. You can see. We'll see what happens. I am going to say that the Heat end up getting the one win off of the Bulls. I can't stick too much to the Wizards. They've won one game this season through 15? Something. I think they're 1-14, 1-13. So, is what it is. Michael, I appreciate you coming on today. Any last thoughts on the Bulls this season or anything you want to plug for the listeners and viewers?
Yeah. So just one last thought just for the listeners. I was a huge fan of the Bulls drafting Noah Singh. I think we all should have understood when they took him. He's the age of like a college freshman. It's gonna take a while. We all want to see him play. I do think it's gonna be a while if we even see him play at all this season. I think the ultimate goal of drafting him, just to wrap it up, was when Isaac Okoro is near the end of his contract and you're sort of dealing with that, you already have a player who you at least know will be entering that defender wing rotation role. So we may see Noah at some point, but it's not something I would consume myself with. He dominated in his first G League games, 28 points. So definitely watch him every time he plays, and hopefully we'll see him get maybe a 10-minute role someday soon. But I wouldn't worry too much about it. But follow me on Twitter at ZenMasterMike, at Roundtable. We'll always have a lot of great Bulls content. I want to shout out our teammate Kevin, who had a great story on Javon Carter recently that I really enjoyed, that showed a lot about how this team, it's kind of a next man up mentality, very unselfish. Everyone's sort of down to do whatever they need to for the better of the team. So very good story. Definitely check that out. And we'll have some more stuff coming soon.
Absolutely. As always, you can find all of our written content now at BullsRoundtable.com. That's right. You don't have to go on this massive long URL of roundtable.io/sports/NBA/Bulls. You can, it still works, but it's much easier to just find BullsRoundtable.com. We'll have written daily coverage there for the Chicago Bulls, who will be at home this entire weekend, so much more in-person coverage. Finally, road trip is done. You can also find more episodes of the Bulls Roundtable podcast and some of our daily video coverage, press conferences, interviews, short-form videos, anything on our YouTube channels, as well as our Spotify. And until next time, we will see you then. This has been the Bulls Roundtable Podcast. Thanks for joining.